Good afternoon, everybody. How are you? This is Enrique, the founder and director of Spanish United. Today on our show, I have a very special guest. Would you be kind enough to introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure, I'm Charlotte Craven. I'm the mayor of Camarillo currently, although my official title is council member. We have 5 council members and we rotate who's going to be mayor. And this is my 35th year on the city council. And next year will be my last.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Thanks.
So, as we spoke over a text message, the reason why I invited you to the show has to do with Hispanophobia. So, as you probably know, Hispanophobia is a reoccurring phenomenon here in our country because of many issues, because of immigration, employment, demographic change, etc. And I believe that Hispanophobia has gotten out of control, but you don't really hear about it because Hispanics don't tend to talk about and voice about it. And I started this foundation organization about a year and a half ago after the death and murder of Andres Guerrero, who was a 17-year-old Salvadorian American who was killed by police while he was, working as a security guard over at a body shop in Gardena. So yeah, I think Hispanophobia is a concern for a lot of people, not just with the Hispanic community. And I'm very familiar with Ventura County and that area. And from your view as mayor, what can you say about the Hispanic community in Camarillo? Is there a Hispanic community at all? I'm not too sure in your area of Camarillo.
Um, do you mean an area of town?
Area of town or percentage from what you know?
Um, we have 2 areas of town that are predominantly Hispanic. One is the Berry Street area, and the other is the Ramirez Street area. And each of them includes a couple of streets that go off, but those are the main streets. And I'm very familiar with both areas. Camarillo's only 19 square miles, so it's pretty compact. It's not really spread out a lot.
Hmm. It's more of a small town.
Um, I grew up in southern New Mexico, about 4 miles from the Mexican border and right on the Texas border. If you want to know what a small town is, go there. Camarillo is, I think, a city.
The reason why I asked because I have a friend that lives there, and she told me that when they moved there many years ago, it used to be a small town.
It was a small town. I moved here in 1975 and it had a population of about 40,000 then. I just got the population from the new census and it's 70,000 now. So yeah, it's grown.
It's grown by 30,000.
Right.
So yeah, to get with what I was mentioning, are you familiar with Hispanophobia? Do you know what Hispanophobia is, Mayor Craven?
Could you give me your definition?
Yes, Hispanophobia is the definition of mistrust, hatred, and aversion, and xenophobia towards anyone from is of Latin American or Spanish-speaking descent.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sure helps your listeners know exactly what it is we're talking about today.
Yes, of course.
Um, I'm going to tell you, I have not come into situations where I believe there is mistrust, hatred, or aversion of Hispanic people. But my situation might be a bit different than other people's. My husband and I own rental units. We have 8 rental units here in Camarillo. We used to have, up until just recently, we had 6 rental units in Oxnard. Now we only have 2 because we sold a property.
Mhm.
And we have we started, the first one we bought was in 1976. By and large, we have rented to Hispanics, although we have rented to people of other ethnic and racial backgrounds. We try to treat our tenants very, very well because we don't like to lose tenants. We like them to stay. My husband is recognized on the Ramir Street area as Mr. Mike, and people who don't live in our units will ask him how to fix stuff. So we're kind of known as being very friendly to the Hispanic community, at least on Ramir Street. People on Berry Street may not know me as well. I think the mistrust comes in for people who don't know each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there are people who don't know what's happening in a certain part of town. They don't know people that maybe speak a different language. And I think that's where mistrust comes in. And I think some mistrust is on both sides. I've noticed that when we get new tenants, they tend to not trust us as much. There's a lot of times, and I'm giving you small things here, but there's a feeling that if they tell us that there is a problem with our unit, that we'll fix it and then raise the rent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the case. I mean, that's an indication of mistrust. So you have to work with people a lot in order to get them to trust you, and then the trust can go both ways.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about hatred. I have not felt hatred on any part of anything in Camarillo that has had to do with any race, or Hispanics are not a different race, they're white, but I just haven't felt that. The only hatred I've felt is when people come to city council and they really don't like what we're doing, and it often has to do with something with their neighborhood, but it has nothing to do with this type of thing.
Right. Yeah, the reason
We're
why
gonna put a new gas station on the corner or something, you know what I mean?
Right. No, the reason why I asked, because I just feel that in many parts of the country, Hispanics tend to be scapegoated by others. It doesn't matter if it's, political or whatever. And I just feel that, Hispanics need to be recognized as a third group, because we are growing everywhere, demographically every couple of years, and
The majority in California, I
it
believe.
is the majority in California and many other states, like the American Southwest, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. But in many other states, you don't even have Hispanic population, which is kind of hard to believe. Like if you go like to the South and the Midwest, you won't find any Hispanic people. They're next. They're
Yeah, the
next to zero.
northern Midwest especially.
Yeah, I used to live out there, and you'll be surprised how their worldview is in many of those states is like going back in time like 70 years.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. It's like I used to live in a little town where it wasn't even a town; it was considered a village, because anything that's under 1,000 people is considered a village, and it was very spooky because how people would see you and how they would assume, like you said, a lot of it has to do with mistrust, but also a lot of it has to do is that many people have never met a Hispanic person in many of those states. So I just feel that both both groups need to have more contact with each other, because that'll ease conflict and also ease any type of stigma, because the stigma that many Hispanic people have in the United States is that they're taking people's jobs, they're bringing crime and a lot of other stuff, and I just don't feel that Hispanics are very much welcome in many places. And one of the things that I'm trying to do is trying to dispel the myth that Hispanics are trying to replace everybody. So that's one of the things that I do with my organization, Spanish United, is to work with different cities and towns, organizations. I also do like outreach programs, like for the youth, and to try to, lobby for different laws to be passed, because Hispanics are the only minority in America that don't have any type of hate crimes protections like, Jewish people do, or Black people, or gay people, etc. So that's one thing that I'm trying to do, is to lobby minority protections, and at the same time that we get some type of recognition, is because we're here, we're not going to go anywhere, and I think we should be given some type of respect. I just feel that Hispanics don't get the respect that we deserve.
Okay. I do understand that there are people, and quite a few people probably, who have never had much experience with Hispanic people, other than maybe at a grocery store or gas station, restaurants. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that people think Hispanic people are taking their jobs. I think that Hispanic people are willing to take jobs that other people don't want, especially white people and Asian people, I don't think, want some of the jobs. But those jobs need to be done. They're very important jobs.
That's true.
I think that somehow, as we're going along, especially right now, in Ventura County, but I think all over the nation, we're tending to get more segmented. Let me tell you, I'm 78, and when I grew up, this nation was viewed as a melting pot. So everybody came here. My family was Scotch, Irish, English, and Swiss.
Mm-hmm.
The Swiss was a very, very small part of the total population.
Mm-hmm.
The English, well, with the United States, especially starting over on the East Coast, that's where our roots were. It was like the mother country. So we had this big battle and said, hey, Mom, we don't want anything more to do with you in the 1700s. And then later we kissed and made up. The Scotch, I don't know how many of them came, but they were pretty mild-mannered. But the Irish, during the potato famine, they just migrated and migrated and migrated to the United States and to Canada. And there was a lot of hatred against them. People thought they were taking over. There was an area in New York where the Italians and the Irish just went head to head. Hell's Kitchen, it was called. And as people, the next generation and the next generation, and as those young people who were fighting all grew up, and then their children came along, everything kind of settled down. And they were no longer a minority in the cities where they'd been a minority and a hated minority, but they spread out and they were part of the general population. And so that was the way it used to be. I think now people want to retain their roots more. And there's a lot to be said for retaining your culture and your roots. I can't tell you, other than, gosh, there's an Irish dance. I can't really tell you what Irish culture is all about. But I do understand that people who came here from Mexico or Guatemala or El Salvador, various different places, they cherish their roots from their home country, which is a whole different thing. And that's something that a lot of other people who already lived here don't understand. And then it's, they feel it's not mainstream, so it's suspect. Now, I'll tell you my own experience. When I was 9, we moved from the Upper Peninsula, Michigan, to the very southern part of southern New Mexico, which was a real culture shock for me.
I can imagine.
Yeah, to start with, there was no snow in the winter. And then there were dust storms. So, I mean, everything about life was different, but it took me a year or two. But I finally realized that it was a really good place. The desert didn't have evergreen trees. It was a good place. And at the same time, I was making a lot of friends. There were 100 in my graduating class. There were 7 of us who were not Hispanic, 7 of us who were Anglos, and 2 who were Black, and the rest were Hispanic. We all learned to speak some Spanish, either in classes or a different kind of Spanish that was the vernacular there.
Mm-hmm.
And we all became, and I became very good friends with everybody because I had an only child, had a deep need for friends. These friends are still my friends. But you have to get to know people, and that's what happens in a real small town.
Mm-hmm.
In a city, there are not the I don't want to say cultural, because that goes back to my culture, your culture, whoever's culture.
Mm-hmm.
There aren't the opportunities for getting together and knowing people like there were even when Camarillo was a small town. Let's say Fiesta. We used to have a committee of about 35 people. And I did publicity for them. But all these people were from all over Camarillo, and we got together and talked. We don't have things like that anymore. Everything has gotten smaller. Fiesta has a very small board now to run it. When we had concerts in the park, instead of a great big group of people who said, let's have this kind of music and that kind of music and the other kind of music, it got down to where there were just 5 people on a board who selected what they liked. And now it's gone to be a government run thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that kind of thing, not having places where people can actually get together and work together,
Mm-hmm.
I think that continues the mistrust. When people get to know each other, I think that's when they start to trust each other, when they know each other on a personal basis.
Right.
Not when I know your name and see your picture here, but when we work together and we've done things together for weeks or months or years,
Mm-hmm.
we develop trust. And you know, I'm trusted by all the people who were in my class. From California, I run the Gadsden High School reunions every 5 years, just gearing up for the class of 62 and 63.
Wow.
We're all dying. So we have to be more inclusive, but they're all coming because they trust me. They trust that they can send me their money. They know I'm not going to abscond with it. I'm going to put on what I told them. And that's what it is. It gets down really and truly, I think, to having opportunities to work together with people. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. That's one of the things that I'm trying to do, is that I'm trying to get sponsorships like from different organizations, cities and towns, to try to set up like a Spanish United Community Center in different areas to get Hispanic people to start doing things, to not only learn like language, the Spanish language, cultural things, whatever, but also to work with different groups. I think that if Hispanics were to reach out towards other groups instead of being insular, I think that can dispel a lot of stigma, because one of the things that a lot of people have told me outside the Hispanic community, because I interview all types of people, is that Hispanics are seen to be very insular. It's like part of it has to do is that many don't speak English or whatever, and they tend to be more isolated. So that causes them to evolve into their own culture. And I think that's a problem, because when a people or a nation becomes polarized, there really isn't nothing in common. Like an example would be what happened with the former Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was composed of 15 republics, the Russians being the dominant, but you had different ethnicities and religions and languages. So the only thing that united them was government, which was the communist government. When the Soviet Union collapsed, all those countries broke apart and became independent. A lot of people have told me that they feel that in many ways America's becoming polarized, not just by culture, but also by race. And I feel that if people don't learn to work together and to try to overcome any differences that they may have, I feel that there could be a polarization in the near future. And I feel that
Well, I feel we already have a polarization here.
we do have a polarization, but not to the point where you have different states or different ethnicities, trying to succeed from the union and declare independence. We haven't gotten there yet, but I feel that if it continues the way that it's continuing, it might happen one day, and that could contribute to further instability. And I feel that unity is where there's strength. If America was not united the way that it was when it was founded, America would not be what it is today. And I feel that as more people get more disunited because of political beliefs, because of race, because of language, because of whatever, it's not going to hold us together as a group. One of the things that I'm trying to do with my organization is get all the Hispanic groups together, regardless if they're Mexican, Central American, Puerto Rican, Cuban, Dominican, South America, Spaniard, etc. Because Hispanics, we are not monolithic, but we have a common denominator, which is the Spanish language, identity, and culture. Hispanics can be white, black, Native, Asian, or a mixture of all those four together, because there's a stigma that people believe that Hispanic is brown, or dark. You have Hispanics that are from all colors, but they all speak the same language. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to emphasize Hispanic unity, because I feel that if all the Hispanics were to work together and put it beside their differences, I think they could do a lot for their communities. Like what I'm trying to do is that I'm also trying to institute reforms within Hispanic communities, because
I'm sorry, you dropped your voice. You're trying to institute.
reforms.
I didn't hear that word.
Reforms.
Okay, reforms. Okay,
Yeah,
I got it.
and what I mean by reforms is that in order to have social reforms, there needs to be economic reforms. And those economic reforms come by when people have the resources and the means to not only provide for themselves, but they could also transform their communities. Like, let me give you an example. If you look at all of the county of San Gabriel, which is Arcadia, Temple City, all that area is predominantly Chinese or Asian. But what I marvel about it is that that area is all nice and clean and safe, and they take care of it. But the Asian community, from what I see, even though they may have different languages, because that's with Hispanics, Asians are not monolithic, is that they work together, and they work together by investing in each other. And I feel that if people were to invest in their children, primarily like in their families, they can do a lot of benefits, not only for their own family, but also with their communities to make it better. It's like a lot of the right wing people like to complain, oh, that many urban areas don't want to better themselves. And my answer to them is not because they don't want to better themselves, it's because they don't have the resources. There's a lot of Hispanic children that are in many urban areas that are highly educated, that if you give them the resources and the tools, they can flourish and they can even become civil leaders in their communities, but they don't have the resources. It's not really that people don't have the intelligence, is that people lack the resources. Like, everything involves resources. Like, if you don't have the resources to do certain things, doesn't matter how intelligent you are, you can't function without without money. And I feel that the only way that Hispanics can progress and move forward, and this might sound controversial, is that Hispanics need to get educated. One of the things a lot of people like to criticize or mock Hispanics is that they're not educated. It's like we're only seen as domestic workers or people to be exploited, but they don't see us as people that are doctors or engineers or neurologists or scientists, or that type of thing. Like, I myself have experienced stigma that just because they assume I have a Spanish last name, they think I I clean I clean ditches instead of someone that could have a academic conversation with somebody. My background is an education, and one of the things that I teach with my students many years ago was that uh, always ask questions, use critical thinking, uh, investigate everything and put all the facts together, and then using critical thinking and reasoning, you come to your own conclusions. And I think that's very important for any group if they want to progress and move forward, is that you cannot stay where you are. I understand that when certain groups immigrate to this country, especially if they're like a certain age, it's harder to get an education. I am very aware of that. But as far as the children and the future generation, I feel they need to encourage them to move forward. It's like, for example, when the Asians, the Chinese, for example, when they came to America like 100 years ago, they were considered like the worst of the worst, even worse than Mexicans and Black people, because they looked different. They came from the other side of the world. But as time went on, they went from being coolies, to building the railroads, to being one of the highly intelligent people of this country that contributed in academics and science and whatever. But a lot of it had to do because with education. And I think that if Hispanics were to emphasize more on education.
Sorry.
Not a problem. Like I was saying, if Hispanics were to emphasize more on education and just thinking, oh, it's not for us, it's only for white people, for Asians, I think they could transform their communities, because there's a lot of Hispanics that are even opposed to their children getting an education, which I think is a complete travesty.
Well, I'm just thinking, we have in one of our units in Oxnard a lady who's lived in that unit 35 years maybe. She raised her own children, and then she had a sister. Let's just say something happened to her sister, and she adopted the sister's child, who was much younger than her own children. And so that little girl was 4 when she moved in with her aunt, adoptive mother. And that little girl is now has graduated from college, and she's going on to become an attorney.
Oh, wow.
So, and they've lived on Section 8 all these years. I think there is a segment of the pot, and when this lady first moved in, she didn't speak English, but she got a series of jobs, never high paying, but always with the idea that she was going to do better for her children than her parents had been able to do for her.
Mm-hmm.
And so her children, unfortunately, one of them got hooked up in drugs, and that wasn't good. But the other one also went to college. But when she got her bachelor's degree, she went on with her job, with her career. This one is going on. So we have other tenants. That one, the specifics came to mind. We have other tenants that their children, their goal has been to go on. Maybe it's because they have assistance and a good place to live. They're not afraid of having to move or something. I'm not sure. But I do know we've had quite a few tenants through the years, and our tenants don't tend to move, who have sent their children on to college. And I agree with you, for any group of people, the more education their children can get, the better.
Yeah, it's like, education is so vital because, I understand that a low-paying job is a job, but what happens when you don't have that job? It's like people don't have anywhere else to fall on. So I think it's very important that people have at least an education, or at least a skill in something that could function as an insurance in case, for example, a factory job or a landscaping job, disappears. It's like it's always important to be prepared. And I think that Hispanics have a very good work ethic, but for some reason they don't tend to prepare for things. It's like they have the mañana mentality. Let's resolve it now. I mean, let's do everything now, and then we think about it later. But the way life has shown is that people that don't prepare are the ones that suffer the most.
Yeah, let me put a pitch in too. I think people, and it's not just in this country, as I've traveled, I've noticed, and I call it job specific language. So if somebody works in a warehouse, they learn the English words they need for that job. If they work in a restaurant, they know the menu, they can answer questions about what is in different dishes. They know that lingo. People who work in hotels can answer questions about what's around here, how to get here, the nearby places. They know hotel language. And I think it's important, in addition to going on with an education, I think it's also important to learn some English. And let me put a pitch in for libraries. I believe that every library in the county has a good English as a second language program. We have a lot of people who come to the Camarillo Library. And we have a lot of people who volunteer to teach English, and it's been a very successful program. So if people, and it's all free, if you go to your local public library, whatever they offer is free. So I think that is an opportunity, because sometimes we've had tenants tell us, oh, I can't afford a teacher to learn English. Well, I've directed them to the library because it is free and it's an opportunity, and they get one-on-one instruction. They learn, and I think the one-on-one instruction in that case is probably better than a class. People hesitate to show they don't know something in a class, especially older people.
Right.
Little kids, kindergarten, first, second, third grade, they're more innocent. Right. They don't mind making some mistakes and having a teacher correct them.
Right.
And then everybody, then they know what the math is, or what the word is, what the history was, whatever. But I think that adults, especially in an unfamiliar situation, are much more conscious of making mistakes, and they don't want to do that. So if they're in a one-to-one situation with a teacher that's showing a lot of interest in them, I think it's a lot easier to learn a new language or math or whatever it is they need to learn.
I agree with you. And I know that Burbank has an adult literacy program, which is provided by the library, that helps people to learn English, because that's also another factor, is that Hispanics tend to be the only group that is resistant to learn English, and that causes a lot of resentment, because it's like, you know, Hispanics are seeing that, they want to, be part of the country, but it's like they don't want to learn the language. And with any country, doesn't matter where you go to, it's expected that you learn the language, even if it's basic, like a couple of words. It's like, it's impossible to live in a place and work and live and not learn the language. That will make anybody upset. It's like, if people go to Latin America, they'll learn Spanish. I think a lot of people were to be upset as well. So I think that if Hispanics want to have better relations with American people, they're gonna have to learn English. It doesn't mean that they have to give up their language and their culture, because a lot of Hispanics, the reason why they're so resistant to assimilate, is because they feel they're going to lose their identity. And I could understand where they come from, because I know that all other groups that have become white, it doesn't matter if they're Jewish, Italian, Polish, whatever. It is true, as time has gone, within a generation or so, they have lost their language and their customs. They're no different than any other American people. Same thing with African Americans. They've lost their culture too. It's like they're no longer, the tribes that were brought here when their ancestors came as slaves. But they don't understand that, there is a benefit of having another language. Like I myself, I speak both languages, speak English and Spanish. I'm trying to learn Chinese. I could understand Portuguese, Italian, and French. But it's very important to learn different languages, because the more you learn, the more you earn. So the more you know about a certain subject, the more people are willing to pay you for it. It's like the more skills you have, the more benefit you get. And I feel that if Hispanics were to look at things on a economic lens, instead of looking at it through, we just have to be insular and that's it, I think they would see a lot of opportunities open up for them. But unless they take that initiative, those doors are going to remain closed.
Well, I agree 100%. If I move to any Latin American country, I would expect that I would have to learn the language if I didn't already speak it. I mean, it's been years and years since I left southern New Mexico, so I don't speak Spanish the way I used to. I can pick it up if I when I travel, and it does come back to you fairly quickly. But if I were to move permanently, I would expect that I would have to be relearning and then speaking that language. Maybe not at home, but when I was out. And I think, well, my experience has been that a lot of our tenants do learn English, but it takes time.
Yes, that's so true.
Especially if you're learning it on your own while you're on a job. And that's why I try to get people to go to the library to sign up, and we can start you pretty quickly just to learn English. I mean, that's what our adult literacy program is: learn and read English.
Hmm. And
We don't have any programs in math or anything like
right,
that.
as far as preserving the Spanish language, do you believe that Hispanic people should preserve their language in
I
America?
think that being bilingual is a definite plus. There are a lot of jobs that you need to speak both languages.
Yes, I think it's very important that the more languages people know, I think it can open a lot of opportunities. It's like one of the things that a lot of people say about Americans is that they don't want to learn any other language, and they don't even speak their language well. Wow. Look at
Right.
you look at other people like Europeans, for example, like they speak 5 or 6 languages, and that's the norm. And that's because they
Well,
trade with each other.
in the Netherlands, and I believe in several other European countries, not all of them, they start in first grade and they learn 7 languages.
Yes, that's very true. I know that Canada, they teach both English and French.
Right.
I know that in Singapore, they teach 5 languages, even though the majority is Chinese, but they speak Malay, they speak Tamil, they speak English, and I think they speak I think it's Indonesian or whatever, but they speak all those languages, and that puts them at a tremendous advantage.
Well, I think that it's important for people to speak Spanish, and not just Hispanics. I think it's important for all of the non-Hispanic speaking people to learn Spanish as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think it's very important because I think that could create cultural and economic links with the Hispanic community. Like I had a podcast a few months ago with the mayor of Alhambra, and she was a Chinese lady, and she was telling me that one of the things that she's doing is that she is getting the Chinese students to learn Spanish so that way they can learn and deal with the Hispanic population. At the same time, she also mentioned that she would like to work with me in the future to possibly co-sponsor a Spanish United Community Center so that way Hispanic kids could not only learn academics and to also learn Chinese, because I think that if Hispanics were to learn not only English and Chinese, which are the 3 dominant languages in the world, I think that can open a lot of potential. But again, it all has to start from when they are little, and I feel that if the schools were to become more academic instead of vocational, which sadly that's what's been happening the last couple of decades, I think that will prepare children for a better future as they get older, and also prevent them from dropping out of high school.
So where are you located, Enrique?
I am located in Glendale.
In Glendale. Let me say that what I think, you were asking how to combat this, how to get more trust, how to get less hatred, how to get less aversion. I think as we've been talking, this is kind of solidified. If there were people who in each town around here who were prominent people, Hispanic, who were interested to form some kind of an organization to bring people together. And each community might have its own different kind of organization.
Mm-hmm.
But that person, because of whoever he or she would be, would automatically be more trusted by the Hispanic community and the non-Hispanic community. And people from more groups would join. And once they're working together, then all this other stuff goes out the window because they know each other.
Right.
Other than maybe one person, and he said something to me or said something to somebody, and all of a sudden that person's kind of no, but you know what I mean? That
Right.
works all ways.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do, and my organization is grassroots, and that's one of the reasons why I'm trying to get funding, because I feel that if my organization were to establish links with more prominent people, I think it could create more of a harmony. Like everything that I'm doing is, grassroots. I'm
Right.
taking my own resources, which is not that much, to try to reach out to people and trying to make a collective unison with different groups, because I feel that unity and harmony is very important. Like, I live in a town that's predominantly Armenian, and I'm trying to like get together like with the local leaders to to do some joint functions together. And I feel that if I'm able to make a breakthrough with one group of people, that could also do breakthroughs with different. But again, it's not easy when you're doing everything from from Jump Street. Believe me, if I had more resources, I will be able to knock on doors. I've been very grateful that I've been able to talk with even a few politicians and a few mayors. To at least to have my case and petition. What I would like to do with my organization for on behalf of the Hispanic community.
Well, I wish you luck. But, you just mentioned another group, the Armenians, the Chinese. People like to stay with other people that they consider their own kind.
Right.
And I think as long as we have that, and when you get more and more and more generations of those groups that want to stay as a small group, want to preserve their own cultures, I think that doesn't promote trust from other groups.
No, it does not. And I believe that the only way people can break from that is when you have leaders from all sides willing to come together with discussion, regardless of what your political views are, economic status, whatever. Because I feel that if you have a respectful discussion, which is civil, and people can discuss and even petition each other, uh, what can be done to improve things, between both groups or even within their own group, I think that can create a common cause. Another thing I was going to mention, a concern that I have is that as the Hispanic population grows, I don't see that the Hispanic population economically is catching up, like with the Asians, with the Armenians, with the Jews, with the Persians, etc. And
I don't think so either.
yeah, and that could be a danger, because when you have a small minority of people that holds a lot of wealth, and then you have a huge underclass of people that feel that they're being exploited, and they're not sharing in the wealth that they are creating for the small minority of people. What it has shown historically is that it creates revolution. It's like when I've spoken with people about why communism existed, it's not because people want to take things from other people. That's not the case. But when you have people that are workers, that are just regular people that have nothing to do with politics, that they feel that they're being exploited, and then that the ones that are in power or have the means are taking from them, it just gets to a point that human nature shows that they just lash out. And that's one of the reasons why there's been revolutions all over the world. Let it be communist, let it be Islamic, let it be whatever. And I kind of feel that Hispanics in the United States, and in many ways, they're like a time bomb, because we're growing and growing and growing, but at the same time, they're not catching up economically with their white neighbors, with their Asian neighbors, other minorities that are well-to-do. And many of these Hispanics feel that they're being exploited. So I feel that if there's not economic reforms within each Hispanic community throughout the United States within the next couple of decades, this is my personal observation, my theory, that there could be civil war or instability. It's like what's happening in Europe with the growing Muslim population is that you have a segment of that society which is growing rapidly through high birth rate, through immigration, legal and illegal. And then you have a native population that every decade is decreasing. And when you have newcomers that come in that not only don't assimilate, but at the same time they feel excluded from partaking in the economic prosperity of the host country, that creates problems. And I feel that's happening here in America. That many Hispanics feel that they're not sharing in the economic prosperity, even though they're contributing to it. I just feel that if Hispanics were to share the economic prosperity of the United States, equally, I think Hispanics would feel more proud of being American. That's my personal take on it.
You've given me something to chew on, something to think about. I hadn't really thought of it in those terms, but you certainly make a lot of sense. But let me ask this. So you said share in the wealth. So are you talking about more opportunities for higher paying jobs, or more of the government giving out more money?
I believe it's both, but I feel primarily it has to do with having more economic opportunities when it comes to jobs. Because when people have more economic opportunities, and what I mean by opportunities is not just having a good paying job, but also having benefits, having opportunities to move up in a company, having a social safety net that could contribute to a lot of more equitable income at the same time, also to create more stability. Because when people feel that they're a part of something and they're appreciated and they're being compensated for what they're worth, not by what they feel that they are to be exploited, it creates loyalty. Like in my mother's era, my mother, she's 82 years old. She told me that back then, before everything became corporate, everything was like a family. Come businesses and companies were like a family. So it's like they had like a reward system. Like, let's say that if an employee did X, Y, and Z, they would reward them by not only paying them a little bit more, but giving them little rewards. Hey, you did a good job, I'll give you this. Hey, you did this. So it's like when you reward people, and I could also say this when I went to high school and also when I was in school, that they used to give out treats to the students. Let's say if a student got a right answer, the teacher will give them a candy or give them this, or it's like human nature, they want to feel rewarded. So I feel that if jobs were to reward their workers, not only they will be more loyal, but they will work harder. Like the more you pay somebody, the harder they work. The more you give them more benefits, the harder they work. The more you treat them with respect, that hey, that they are part of a family instead of just a number that you could just discard whenever you feel like it, they'll work harder. Like that's one of the reasons why productivity in America has gone down, is because workers don't feel that they should have any loyalty to their company. It's like, why am I going to work harder or be loyal to my job or to my company if all of a sudden my boss or my company decides to shut down, outsource to another country, and then I get fired or get laid off? It's like, that's one of the reasons why the American worker of all ethnicities is not productive like they should, because they don't feel that they have any loyalty, and that has to do with when everything goes corporate. And I feel that corporations need to be I wouldn't say stopped, but there needs to be more control, because when you let corporations control everything, um, it just creates animosity. It makes wages go down. It lowers productivity, and it just creates more income inequality, and that leads to social unrest later on.
Well, I do know that Hispanic people are very hard workers. They want to do exactly what you want them to do. A lot of times people don't explain what they want done very well.
Hmm.
And that's the person who hires them.
Exactly.
That's the
Exactly.
problem. You have to, if you want things done in a specific way, you need to tell people. And sometimes you have to show them the results, here's what we did before. I want
Exactly.
it done like this or something like that. And then we have found that Hispanic workers, uh, tradesmen, are very eager to do what you want them to do. And they're very hardworking. And if you pay them well, they will be loyal. And
Mm.
when you call them again, they'll be right there because they know you're going to treat them fairly. And I think my opinion is you always need to treat whoever you're dealing with fairly.
Exactly. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to like them or be their friend, but just have common courtesy, because when people don't feel respected, it just causes animosity.
And when there's something that's not done quite right, you need to let that person know what happened, give them an opportunity to fix it. And then you can go on respecting each other more instead of just, oh, I'm going to find a new plumber or electrician. But I have one other thing, as well as education, and I know you talked about trade schools and technical schools, but people who are in that business can make a lot of money. And I think people need to understand that if they go ahead and take the classes at a junior college or a community college or whatever they're calling them these days, um, and get the education and get their certifications, they will have the opportunity to make a lot of money because they will then own their company.
Exactly. And I think that's what is necessary for people to move forward, is that once they become business owners, they could make, their own money. But, people need to have the means and the resources. It's like, if people don't have resources, doesn't matter how skilled or educated they are, they're not going to go very far. And I feel that that's a fault that America has, is that they don't invest in the people, and I feel that's detrimental for America's growth.
I think it is, but I think there are opportunities for people to get educated. We know two brothers, both are plumbers. One did what he needed to do. He went to community colleges. He got his certifications with the contractor's license board, bureau, whichever it is.
Hmm.
And he has the company. The brother, he just really didn't want to do that and spend the time. But if you want to get ahead, you have to spend the time studying and doing everything. The brother knows everything the other one did, but he never took the test. So he's now working for his brother. And we always call him, because the brother with the company, he's got so much work.
Right.
The one we call, he comes whenever we call him, because we've been calling him sometimes once a week for 5 or 10 years. And he knows we'll pay him quickly. We pay him for whatever he does. We don't quibble. But on the other hand, he could be doing better for himself
Hmm.
if he had been willing to take the tests and do what he needed to do.
I agree with you. I definitely agree with you. Well, that's all the time that we have, Mayor. Thank you so much for taking your time to come on my show. I truly appreciate it. And as soon as I'm done, I will email you the link to the podcast with the email that you had emailed to me. So I'll get that with you as soon as possible.
Yes, that's just fine. And that's the email. I have another email at Verizon, and half the time it doesn't work.
But I really appreciate you taking your time to come on the show, Miss Craven.
Okay, thank you very much, Enrique.
Have yourself a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.